Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from Blue Nile. And right now, you can have the Blue Nile anniversary sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Shop stress-free and find your forever place. Go to BlueNile.com today. Hey, look who's off the IL. Look who's coming off the bench. Look who's back. It's Millard Thomas. He's over there, and I'm your pal Sully. Feeling positive, testing positive. Let's do Locked On MLB. Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. This is the weekly meetup where I bring our good pal Millard Thomas on to yap about the state of baseball. I am your positive, tested host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Call me Positive Sully. I am safely social distanced from everybody currently listening to my slightly more exhausted voice. And joining me is the host of Locked On Diamondbacks, my buddy Millard Thomas, more than 6 feet away from me here in the luxurious Locked On MLB studios in Pasadena, California, overlooking the historic Rose Bowl. Millard Thomas, tell people where you are, who you are, and why you are.
Yeah, I'm in Arizona. Haven't tested recently, but maybe I should go do that pretty soon just to be safe. But I should be in Puerto Rico right now, but my flight got canceled, so we rebooked it and we're heading out tomorrow. So if you are listening to Locked On Diamondbacks during the week, it's all going to be pre-recorded podcasts. And speaking of Locked On Diamondbacks, follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, Locked On Diamondbacks, on all podcasting platforms and on YouTube at Locked On Diamondbacks. And of course, check out Sully on Locked On MLB on YouTube as well.
Yep, and we're at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Hey, big thanks to Jeff Carr. Big thanks to Lindsay, to H-Town, to everyone who filled in on the few days where I could not do the podcast. When hey, COVID's no joke, everyone. It's no joke. And I'm very happy that I've been double vaccinated, double boosted, and here I am in day 4 of this, and I'm coming out the other side. Believe me, I didn't sound like this. By the way, the behind-the-scenes mechanism of today's show, which I'm recording on my phone because for whatever reason my laptop was not allowing me to connect with Millard. I'm telling you, the baseball gods were doing everything to say, Sully, take another day off. But I said, no. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to play through this because I'm boosted, I'm ready to play, and I know that's best for the team. That I'm Paul Sullivan. That means the opposite of me would be Paul Goldschmidt, who, look I know I'm going to get some hate emails because I always get hate emails whenever I imply things like vaccinations work. Maybe we should use them. As I am coming out the other end of this, I'm just going to stick to baseball on this and say Paul Goldschmidt's a buffoon for baseball reasons. Okay, Goldschmidt, who is part of a baseball culture who just a decade ago were getting injections from Alex Rodriguez's cousin in a bathroom, are now terrified of vaccines that actually work being delivered by doctors. Now, maybe he would feel better if A-Rod's cousin came in and gave it to him in a bathroom stall. But either way, the Cardinals are going to be going to Toronto, and they're going to be without Paul Goldschmidt, who is the front runner to win the National League Most Valuable Player. And, oh, by the way, they're also going to go without Nolan Arenado, who is probably a top 10 MVP finisher in the National League this year. And look I was going to bring something else up at the beginning, but I'm going to get this out of the way. Just get, and I'm not going to talk about this the whole show, but I am talking about this in terms of baseball, okay? The Cardinals are hanging on to their playoff lives right now. As I'm recording this, they're a playoff team by a single game ahead of San Francisco and ahead of Philadelphia. Okay? San Francisco has pretty good pitching. And if they dip into the market and pick up a decent hitter, they can make up one game over the last few months. And Philadelphia has talent, and maybe they'll get Bryce Harper back, or maybe they'll make a big deal. I don't know. But, and they're behind Milwaukee by a couple of games. They're not a lock to make the postseason. And if we get to the end of the year, don't worry, Miller, I'm not going to filibuster here, but I've been out for a couple of days. I'm just getting warmed up. If the Cardinals go to Toronto, and I don't know what you saw, what they've done to Boston this weekend, but yeah. I still think they're scoring runs on Friday, even though it's Sunday right now.
You mean my dark horse team to maybe knock off a top contender, Sully, the Boston?
Yeah, the Red Sox. They were not told that the All-Star break is over, and Wally is pitching for them these days. The Blue Jays bats have they found their swing, and the Cardinals going there with a depleted offense. It is not out of the realm of possibility that the Cardinals could miss the postseason by 1 or 2 games. And if they go up to Toronto with an intentionally weakened team, lose a series there, and miss the postseason by 1 game, I'm not 100% sure how much he's doing it for his own personal cause and his own personal integrity argument is going to hold over with a lot of St. Louis fans, if that's the case.
Yeah, we'll see, because it definitely sucks. I mean, like you said, it's a huge home field advantage right now for Toronto, for teams just to go in there and lose maybe 10% of their roster because of vaccination rules. But at the same time, if I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, like, I think I would feel differently maybe if it was like more a baseball rule, but it's like a Toronto rule, really. It's like kind of what the NBA had with Kyrie Irving in New York. Like, it was a New York rule. Like, other teams and players that were unvaccinated could still go into New York and play, with just Kyrie that couldn't play. So maybe if it was more of a baseball rule, maybe if I was like a St. Louis fan, I would look at Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado a little bit differently, because you're literally going against the grain of baseball. But because it's more of a country rule with what Toronto is doing over there, maybe I wouldn't feel as bad. I still would feel bad because Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado aren't over there, but I feel like it's a little bit different when it's the country putting the rule in as opposed to Major League Baseball doing it. So it definitely sucks, because I think, even though we play 162 games, it's still crazy how close these finishes come toward the end. That's why I'm like, I don't think we need to play 162 games, 112 games, 100 games. Doesn't matter how long the season is. It's still going to be a close playoff race, whether you play 200 games, whether you play 100 games. That's why I think we need to shorten the season. But if you're St. Louis, like, it does suck that your 2 best players aren't going to be over there doing the close race. But at the end of the day, it's more of a Toronto rule than a baseball rule anyway.
And they're doing it to themselves. I'm sorry, they're doing it to themselves. They made that decision. And so here's my violin playing for Paul Goldschmidt. You made the decision. I have some strong words to say, but I'm keeping it to baseball here. And he made the decision to make a team worse in this series. Now, here's another thing, though. And this may be even a bigger factor. The way this newfangled wild card playoff thing is set up, if I'm not mistaken, it's like a best of 3 series, but it's played in 1 location. As of right now, one of those locations is Toronto. Now, what if you get to the elimination playoff series and, I'm not going to go play in it because I'm afraid to go to CVS. How's that going to fly? Now we're not talking about 162 games. We're talking about we have to win 2, and this is the postseason. Well, but, I'm afraid of pharmacy. So how much is that going to fly? If your team now, like if the Blue Jays are one of those, if I'm not mistaken, the division winner with the worst record, which right now would be Minnesota, and the wild card team with the best record, which right now I believe if Toronto wins and Tampa loses, then that's Toronto. Then if you're Tampa, Boston, Baltimore, Seattle, whatever the other teams are, you got to say, hey, get vaxxed or don't play in the playoffs.
No, it's gonna have major implications. This Toronto thing, like it's going to be huge for the postseason, specifically in the American League. And I don't know, it's gonna be one of those things that gets pretty weird because if Toronto does make it to the World Series, and we do look at this home field rule as like a big reason as to why, like I don't know, are we gonna have the asterisk talk as to maybe it's the reason why Toronto made it to the World Series, or we're gonna like diminish what they do? I don't know. I'm just saying what the national conversation could be if we look at Toronto. It's like, all right, when the team's going there, 10% of the roster is not playing because of whatever, philosophy.
Get vaccinated. That's how we solve the problem. Get vaccinated. It is very easy. Then you can put your team in a position to have those great memories for the rest of your life and maybe even win a ring. And hey, if you want to pop the question or celebrate a milestone moment, you can find jewelry as unique as the one you love, the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. This weekend, one of my great friends in the world got married up in the Bay Area, and I'm so thrilled for them. And I saw their diamond, I saw the ring. It's pretty good. I obviously I wasn't physically there, but they showed it to me, and I asked them about it, and they said, "You know what? We didn't get the best deal." I said, "Here's the problem. You didn't go to BlueNile.com. And you know what? Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft specific engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. So guess what? You got to make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on right now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% off on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships for free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever place. Go to BlueNile.com today. Hey, I'm on my phone. Millard Thomas is in his luxury studio. And I'm done talking about COVID. All I've been talking about COVID is for the last week. And I had to get into the Goldschmidt thing because, look, if you're mad at someone, if you want to write hate stuff, just send all your angry tweets and emails to Creator Thomas 24 on Twitter, because Millard was the one who put me up to that.
I don't know. After my take, I might have some QAnon DMs. I don't know.
Bring it. No, send them to me at Sully Baseball. I believe me, I've gotten worse. By the way, let's talk about something for happy and fun. The Hall of Fame inductions were today on Sunday. David Ortiz, one of my favorite players of all time. Yeah, I know he did PEDs. Do you want there's some players in there who did PEDs? And I don't care. I don't care. We're going to eventually have he was great for the sport, and a Hall of Fame museum is incomplete without him. Just like I think it's incomplete without Clemens. It's incomplete without Bonds. And guess what? I think it's incomplete without Sammy Sosa. How many people, the sport of baseball was saved by McGwire and Sosa, and we're going to pretend that they didn't do what they did? Good Lord. How many people are huge baseball fans now because they grew up watching Sammy Sosa? Let's knock off. Like, look at, I'm a big Hall guy. I want people in there who made the game great. And Ortiz, obviously, to me, he was amazing. I'm glad that Jim Cott and Tony Oliva are still alive for their long overdue inductions to the Hall of Fame. There was no reason why Minnie Minoso and Buck O'Neil are posthumous. They could have been put in their lifetime. I mean, what a wonderful speech we would have had from Buck O'Neil. And Minnie Minoso, who was just filled with life and positivity, and came up as a pinch hitter in the 70s and in the 80s, so he could play in the was it the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I think he played in all those. Broke the color barrier in the city of Chicago. Was one of those ubiquitous figures in White Sox history. No reason why he should have been in posthumously. But you know what? Better late than never, at least. Gil Hodges, who died just before the start of the 1972 season. I hope this brings the end to a debate, because he wasn't in for many years because he was a very good player. and he was the manager of the Mets when they won the World Series, one of the most shocking World Series ever. And then he died. And if you combine his whole career, that's a Hall of Fame career. But for some reason, well, he has to go in as either a player or as a manager, and he didn't do enough in either. So, or how about putting him in as a great figure in baseball? Why do we have such hard, fast rules to celebrate people? Gil Hodges, I'm glad, is in. Obviously, I mentioned Minosa. Bud Fowler, who was a pioneer African-American player from the 19th century. Again, posthumous, in case you were wondering.
Most of these guys.
But you know what? I'm all for when you have someone like a Bud Fowler and have people ask, who was that? And it asks questions, and you begin to celebrate our history. I would love to go to Hall of Fame induction one of these years. And I haven't been to Cooperstown for a long, long time. But it's always a happy experience. It's a celebration of everything good in baseball.
Yeah, also shout out Barry Bonds because today's his birthday. So he gets to watch the Hall of Fame inductions on the day. He's no longer eligible for the Hall of Fame on his birthday. Must be a great day for Barry over there. But happy to see my guy, because I know we both grew up as Red Sox fans. Happy to see my guy, Big Papi, make the Hall of Fame as well. Because we also can't forget, like, we almost lost Big Papi back in 2019 to a shooting. And it's crazy how far you come with his recovery and seeing just him back in the national spotlight. Like, he's retaken over baseball as like a huge figure once again, with what he's been doing with the broadcast stuff. So it's been really great to see Big Papi again, just because personally I grew up as like a Red Sox, Lakers, Saints fan, and there's potentially a world, an alternate timeline where
what?
Yeah, it's a weird combo. You know, we don't gotta get into the nitty gritty of it, but there's an alternate timeline where I lose maybe Big Papi and Kobe Bryant in back-to-back years, and that Miller Thomas is just absolutely devastated. So I'm glad to see Big Papi recover, and just overall, like, it's still kind of crazy though that he's like pretty much like the only dude from the Hall of Fame voting that actually got in. Like, even if you look past the Barry Bonds and the Roger Clemens, like guys like Scott Rowland and Todd Helton, those guys of the world that were on the ballot too. Like, it is crazy that Big Papi's the only guy. And I do like the exclusiveness of the MLB Hall of Fame, because like the Basketball Hall of Fame, it feels like every dude gets in, but I do like the exclusiveness of the MLB Hall of Fame. It's just the political game that comes into the voting and everything that else surrounds it that I don't like. We see it also in the NFL Hall of Fame when guys like Terrell Owens aren't first ballot Hall of Famers, even though he's like top 2 in every wide receiving category. So let's take the politics out the Hall of Fame and let's make sure to just put the best players in there. Obviously there's some things with steroids and PEDs. I guess that muckies it up, because I still think guys like Barry Bonds should be in, but guys like A-Rod shouldn't be in there. So it can be really finicky, but.
Okay, now let me ask you that. That's interesting. You think Bonds should be in, but Rodriguez should not.
Yeah.
Now why?
Because I feel like pre-2004 steroids were accepted in baseball, and then after 2004 we pretty much tested every few months, whatever the testing regimen, and we actually cared about doing steroids. We actually had suspensions and rules in place. It was pretty much a Wild West pre-04 with no rules in place. So pre-04 it was okay in baseball, and basically we looked past it. But after 04 we actually tried to crack down. So if you were still trying to do steroids once we put rules in place, then I look at you differently.
All right, I don't know if I necessarily align with that, but I'll at least I'll understand what you're coming from. I think A-Rod was a Hall of Fame level player with roids or not. And I think he's the greatest third baseman in Yankee history. And I think that he was an extraordinary talent. And he gets a lot of hate that I don't always understand. And this is coming from a guy who was there when he slapped the ball with the Royal glove and classic booing the dude. But it gets to be ridiculous. How much the vilification of him, it seems to go beyond steroids, and it's because it was always there before we even knew he was a juicer. Mm-hmm. In fact, when people thought he was clean, people still hated him. So
I think it's also because he was also a guy that was like great in the regular season, kind of like that Peyton Manning issue. It felt like he didn't perform as well in the postseason. So I think also people felt like maybe he was overrated. We talked about him as one of the best players in baseball, but when we got to the big stage, he didn't always come through in those moments.
But, that being said, he also was he carried the Yankees to the 2009 World Series title.
And that changed things. Before that 09, it wasn't like
that. Even after that, though, even after that, they were still booing him like he was a bum. Yeah. And there's only Jeter became the captain in 2003, and under Jeter's captainhood, they won one World Series, and that was basically won by A-Rod. And by the way, if Rivera had locked down the save in 2004 against Boston, and there was no Dave Roberts steal or anything, A-Rod was the MVP basically of that series against Minnesota in the division series. And he batted like 400 with 3 homers in the ALCS up until that point. So he would have been looked upon as a massive postseason performer if they had completed the sweep. And they would have killed the Cardinals in that World Series. So he would have been looked upon like Reggie as a big superstar who came over and delivered. But, you in the upcoming ballot, you're going to see like A-Rod is still on it. Manny Ramirez is still on it. Todd Helton is on it.
Yeah, let me ask you real quick about Manny, because he's like A-Rod. Like, I love Manny. He was one of the best players I ever saw, but then he like tested negative, like, or tested positive. Like, he failed like basically like 5 tests in his career. Like,
I still put him in. I don't know. Maybe I'm too forgiving. Ramirez, I've always said Manny Ramirez was he was his baseball IQ, his hitting IQ. He was like Joe DiMaggio. I mean, he was, as a right-handed hitter, he wasn't just a big home run hitter. I mean, he was a tremendous offensive power. And so he was part Joe DiMaggio and part Gilligan. Like, you sit there and you go like, what is he doing? What are you doing, Manny? As someone who was a fan of Manny when he was with Boston, and then I moved to Los Angeles right around the same time he got traded to the Dodgers, and I saw how he was immediately embraced by, it was Manny Wood. And then a year later, Dodger fans were like, we got to get this guy out of here. And I've equated rooting for Manny Ramirez as like a weekend in Las Vegas. It starts off so much fun. You can't believe all the fun you have. And then it starts to get a little uncomfortable. And then you start looking around your friends and like, wait, what's going on? Should we get out of here? What's happening here? Are we in trouble? And then when it's over, it's like, thank God that's over. But then you look at your friends and go, but it was kind of fun, wasn't it? Yeah, that was kind of fun. That's rooting for Manny Ramirez. Beltran, Sheffield is an interesting case. Yeah. Todd Helton is an interesting case. I would be
crazy. When you look at his stats, his Baseball Reference, it's like career 300 with 900 OPS over like 22 years. It's crazy.
He had a great career. Yeah. He had a great career. And he had also when the Marlins won the World Series in 97, he delivered big time in the postseason a bunch of times. He had a wonderful career. One of the things that hurt his reputation is that he changed teams sometimes within the game. He was bouncing around. He was a wonderful player. The 2 players who had a swing similar to him, and these are 2 players who were physically very different, but Gary Sheffield and Andre Dawson were both 2 players who I saw play live, whose bat speed was so fast and their swing was so level that Gary Sheffield's swing and Andre Dawson's swing looked like a helicopter blade. It was just like, it was so fast and level, like, and you're just like, and it was terrifying. Both of those players. I'm not saying they personally were terrifying. I'm just saying the speed of which they swung the bat. If I were a pitcher, they'd have to change my uniform. So it's interesting because they're like, in terms of first ballots, I mean, Beltran and Frankie Rodriguez, I mean, there's no one on the ballot that's such an overwhelming favorite that you have to look at Rodriguez. You have to look at Ramirez and Helton and Sheffield and even, Pettit to a lesser degree. And Jimmy Rollins, who's on the ballot again, to take a good long look at some of them and start to think of which one, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame moving forward.
Your guy Vizquel's on the ballot once again. I know you love a little Omar Vizquel, probably not. No. Looking ahead at next year's ballot is kind of interesting. One guy on here that I thought was an interesting candidate who's not going to make it, but just from the way his career started to how it ended with Matt Cain, because we saw in this year's ballot, Tim Lincecum was on it. And if you told me after the first 5 years in Tim Lincecum's in his career, was he going to make the Hall of Fame or not? I think everyone would have put it at like 95% Tim Lincecum was going to make the Hall of Fame. He was like 2-time Cy Young Award winner, World Series champion. And then it kind of all fell apart by the time he was like age 28 to age 30. And then you look at Matt Cain, it's like the same thing. Dominant when he was young. He had that perfect game of no hitter early in his career. He won a World Series. He was huge early in his career. And then all of a sudden, like a Tim Lincecum late in his 20s, when he hit the age of 30, it basically all fell apart for Matt Cain as well. So I just look at that early Giants rotation with Tim Lincecum and Matt Cain. Both of those guys, those first 5 years in baseball, two of the best pitchers in the game. And then by the time the age of 30, they were both kind of out of baseball at the same time. So it's just too crazy, those guys who were on early tracks to make the Hall of Fame and then just kind of flamed out by the end of it.
It'd be interesting to make a list of those kind of pitchers who started off, like Brett Saberhagen started off that way. Fernando Valenzuela started off that way. Brandon Webb of the Diamondbacks won a Cy Young. Looked like he was about to get another one, and then all of a sudden his career was over. You see some of these pictures, and like you were saying, like Lincecum, who to this day, like he represents to so many Giant fans the sort of the turn of the franchise. Like when Barry Bonds left, it ended at the end of 2007. Lincecum showed up, and Lincecum represented this new hope for the franchise, which culminated in he basically pitched him to the 2010 World Series title.